All right. Hi, Todd. Today is April 9th, and the video that we're looking at here is your video we took April 7th. I'm going to go ahead and just use this. This is the second time I'm using this software, so I'm kind of learning how to use it. So you just bear with me. We'll try and go ahead and do this in one take and just go all the way through it. And the drawing tools, I'm going to try to use them and see how it works, but I'll try to get the main information that I see from your video and your strokes, and see if we can make a little bit of, make some helpful suggestions. So just run through your forehand here. And the main thing when I'm looking at your forehand is the first thing that I notice is we talked about rotation, and rotation is extremely important in your stroke. Otherwise, you're really arming the ball. It helps with control. It helps with consistent positioning. One of the things that I think that you really need to try and do is rotation by itself is something that's very difficult to probably learn at your age. It's not impossible, but and again, it isn't a criticism to older people. It's just that's just the way it is. But if you notice when you go ahead and you hit the ball, you don't bring your right leg around on the forehand. It's something that you also see on the backhand side. There isn't a complete finish. The left leg doesn't come around. In the backhand, the one-handed backhand, you're not going to have that necessarily that the left leg is going to get pulled through the stroke because it has to come through, or it's going to come through because the momentum of the stroke pulls it through. No, it's basically for reset. But here in the forehand side, if you have correct rotation that begins from the bottom of your feet up through your knees, then you're gonna go ahead and have that sort of like it's going to be an imitation of rotation if we just go ahead and, when you practice, try and bring your right leg around. Bring your right leg around, and what will happen is you'll start to have that basic fundamental of rotation. See, there's no rotation here. Your body is completely twisted, which will happen. It will happen, but it just happens way too early. Like here on the setup, right here. I mean, this all looks good. It looks good. Your setup is good. You've got knee bend. You've got all the elements there to go ahead and have rotation. You swing. You bring the racket slightly below the ball, which is good. Your grip seems to be towards more the continental side. So we talked about having a little bit more semi-western grip. You'll notice that when you swing, and this is the majority of your strokes, you do have sort of this backward push. Your weight does go backwards. If you look at your left foot on the finish, you'll notice that you finish with weight on your heels. Now, right about here, let me put it. Right about there, you hit. This is all good. Now, as soon as you make contact, or maybe what's going to happen is your right leg should have started to want to come around, because your right hip is not engaged in the shot. So you're not rotating from the bottom here. There isn't any. Let me see, use this tool here. Right here, there isn't any usage of any of this right here. You're not rotating your hips. Right, so you have this tremendous, this large area right here, right, from these three squares here, where you're not using that part of your body to really to produce power, produce control. So the majority of your power is coming from your arm and your upper body, which is strong, and you're able to produce power. And it seems like you're hitting the ball hard, which you are, but you're leaving out a huge part of what's possible as far as creating power because of the lack of using basically the bottom 3/4 of your body. And these are huge muscle groups that you're neglecting to use. You're not, your buttocks, your thighs, your hamstrings, you're pushing off the ground, and to make it worse, you're pushing backwards away from the ball when you hit the ball. Now, yeah, these are all telling you what you're doing incorrect. But like I told you before, right? Small adjustments to these parts of your stroke, right? And they don't have to be dramatic, can make a big difference in increasing the power without having to swing so hard. If we can reduce the speed of your arm, you can probably increase your control and your consistency and your contact point. If you can shift the grip over a little bit more to a semi-western grip, then you're probably going to be able to get a little bit more spin easier, which is something, the way that you lay the racket down, you should be able to produce relatively consistently. So, and in these points that I'm talking about, if you make these adjustments and you make it even better and better and better, you're only going to get better. So these flaws, these imperfections in your stroke, the things that you're not doing correctly, there's just room for improvement that can make you a lot better. So like right here, you go quite across your body. You have a loose hand. I like that. I like the way that your hand is nice and loose. Your wrist rolls right over I'd follow through. All right, but at this point right here, that right leg, if you just artificially decide, bring it over so that it becomes parallel with your left foot, you finish in a wide stance, and as quick as possible, you use your elbows to bring your racket back to ready position. Now, whether you do this or not when you live ball, because this is net feeding, I don't know. You may do it automatically. Maybe you don't. My guess is you probably don't. But we can still look at that. All right, so let's go see if we can go ahead. Go to your backhand. See, you're hitting. You're going across your body. That, I don't know if that recorded on there. That was my front doorbell motion sensor going off. Now there's something called lift to the right. All right. Well, there's something called lift to the right on the forehand side, where we can probably talk to you about that another time. But let's see. When you set up. Andrew can show you what lift to the right is. Here. Things that will make your stroke better. A consistent reset. You hit a ball, you go back to a specific starting point. Forehand grip, whatever. Your legs spread apart a certain way. Your knees bent a certain amount. You're feeling the ground pressure underneath you a specific amount. Resetting to this identical positioning every single time as much as possible creates a baseline for your muscle memory to build outwards, right? So you don't have to think about it. You immediately start in this position. And so then when you start to build muscle memory, your muscle memory is basically your stroke, being done automatically at every single point from the beginning, from the end, all the way to follow through, all the way to reset. If you have a consistent reset, if you have a consistent starting point, if you react at a specific time when the ball is hit towards you, then a lot of stuff becomes a lot easier for you. But learning to do that is the difficult part. Paying attention to do that is the difficult part, and it only comes with a lot of repetition. So lift to the right. If you look at your racket face, the racket face is to the left of your face. The racket's heavy. That probably helps with the nice loose grip. This is laying down quite a bit. I'm not sure that I really like the way that you do that. That just adds to you using your arm, although there are people hit like that and they're hit perfectly fine. So let's move on. Let's move on to your backhand here. All right, so the backhand. Like I told you before, the backhand, structurally, everything, you do everything a little bit better on the backhand side, technically. Again, look at the way that you step in with your right foot. It might look like you're going forward, but you're really not. You're digging into the ground. It's like the bottom of your heel, like that one, your toe was it's like it's just not. There is just not that sense of forward, real forward motion on the backhand. You don't necessarily want to be leaning into it, but it's like you're almost starting to push backwards the second that you hit the ball. You're already starting to go backwards. So forward motion is extremely important in strokes. You want to have the forward motion in strokes. The backhand, for a one-handed backhand, you may not necessarily have as much forward motion as you would on the forehand. It isn't like on the forehand. You don't want to be leaning in like you're leaning in through a door. That's going to change your contact point. Forehand is basically you set up, you rotate aggressively, right? Try and use as many muscles as you can from your legs, your thighs, up to your stomach, to your chest, your shoulders, all these bigger muscles, and have your hand as relaxed as possible, your grip as loose as possible, right? And just try and get the contact point as consistent as possible on both sides. How do you fix this? I would suggest probably the best way to do it is first pay attention to your contact point. Try and change your grip on the forehand side. try and just have consistent contact point. Just try at the very beginning. Just try and finish with your, on the forehand side, your right leg parallel to your left leg. The toes and the knees facing in the direction that you hit the ball. A stance that's nice and wide. Now, you're not going to be focusing on rotation from the bottom, but what it's going to do is you're going to actually start to rotate, because you're from the bottom. You're going to actually start to do that. And so this can be a pushing off point to later learn how to rotate a little bit better. Maintain a consistent knee bend. You stand up after you hit a shot. On the backhand side, just bring the leg around after you finish the shot. Bring the leg around. When you pivot, you're gonna pivot. So pivot on your right foot on the backhand side. On the forehand side, majority of the balls that you hit, it looks like you hit them a neutral stance, which is one foot in front of the other. Right? For me, neutral stance is one foot in front of the other. Closed stance is your left foot is going to be to the right of your right foot. Semi-open stance, your left foot is going to be to the left of your right foot on the forehand side. Now, some coaches may use different, I've heard some coaches reverse that, or they are on the neutral and the closed stance. Sometimes they reverse them, and I don't get it. But you hit the majority of your strokes semi-open stance. It doesn't look like you really do any. A neutral stance. Doesn't look like you do any semi-open. But all these balls were fed to you directly straight ahead. So a little bit of movement balls. You're going to do semi-open stance when you are moved laterally, basically straight across of the baseline, or in a straight line across. That's the easiest way you're going to hit a semi-open stance, or learn to hit an open stance that way. When you move forward, it's very difficult to hit a semi-open stance. So most of the shots are probably going to be a neutral stance, which is fine. So I would say just start off, hit against the wall, hit against the machine, have your son feed, hit with your son, or just call Hussein and have him go ahead and just hit with you, and just work on one specific thing, just bringing that leg around on the forehand side, getting the contact point the same, or just changing your grip. When you change your grip, what's going to happen if you do to a more semi-western grip? Your balls are going to want to go into the ground, and they're going to want to go into the ground because you don't have rotation. Once you start to rotate, you're going to have a little bit more plow through, which is the rack is going to go through a little bit straighter through the ball, and that's going to go ahead and lift the ball over the net. So these are a few things. There's probably a lot more we can do, but this has gone over 12 minutes, and so I'm not very concise in this. So. If you have any questions, we can always go ahead and talk about it again, and you can text me or whatever. Any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. So, I hope this helps. Didn't use much of the drawing tools here. I still got a lot to learn on this app, so I hope it was helpful. All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye.